If my people, Bible reading part 217, we are into the book of Second Timothy, written 66, 67 AD, sometime in that frame. And as you've been reading this, you'll notice sometimes there's years when Paul went to Rome, he had to see he had to go for a trial. He was going to be decision was going to be made. What do we do with this Paul guy? Well, you know what? It doesn't run like it's supposed to. It's supposed to be swift justice today. It's supposed to have a fair and speedy trial. That's in the Constitution and the bylaws of all the statutes of the United States. Sometimes you have to wait for now a couple years before you go to trial. Sometimes up to 5 to 6 to 7 years before you finally go to trial. So it's kind of, in these days, it's getting to be like it was in those days, which is, by the way, horrible. If you have to wait to be released and and freed or executed, and you have to wait years and years, there's something wrong with that. So we're living in the last days, and Paul says here he just finished what we just read with Peter, and that's we're in the last days. He was saying that then. So now here we are in Second Timothy after reading First Peter. It's deja vu. Something important here. Once again, this is from Paul, so he starts it in his first entrance, first chapter of what he's reading in his letter. He reminds everybody what he's all about, and it's to Timothy. And then he reminds Timothy about his mother Eunice and his grandmother Lois and how wonderful they are, and he's got to be able to step up and do the same thing, and that's all fantastic. It's a nice little story about Second Timothy, but it's got some blowout stuff right from the beginning. Verse 8, chapter 1. So do not be ashamed to testify about our master or ashamed of me, his prisoner. His prisoner. So during that time, I was basically saying this. Paul had a lot of free time, and he was kind of like out on bail, kind of like what you got today. You can go certain places according to the government while you're before a trial today, just like back then. You can go certain places based upon your behavior and trust that they give into you. Same thing. So Paul, in my opinion, my strong opinion, went to Spain and went to England, went to London, and if he gave a speech up on the hill where St. Paul's Cathedral is, that's I don't have a problem with it. There was so much evidence all over southern England that he was there, and that Yeshua was there, and that Miriam, his mother, was there, and that Lazarus was not there. The whole thing about Lazarus is you have to go to Marseille, France, down on the southern coast there, and they said this is where he died, and this is where he was buried. Having said that, we'll just go on. Just a little something to chew on. Verse 9, who has saved us and called us to a kadosh life, not because of anything we have done, but because of his own purpose and grace. Yeshua's. This grace was given to us in Messiah Yeshua before the beginning of time. Catch the words. Grace was given to us before the beginning of time. So grace was in the Garden of Eden. The grace was the covering. Instead of wearing fig leaves and other things, grace was found. So we are not, dear Mr. Christian Church leadership, we are not in the age of grace. This is not the age of grace. Age of grace has been started from the beginning all the way through. If you're going to argue or anything, it would be we've been in grace since the beginning of time. Now, why do I say that? Because it just said that. So all the other churches and their doctrines and their craziness of traditions, so that they can have a separate church with a separate name, with a separate, they can have their own little world there, and they run their little businesses, gathering in all the sheep who are dumb enough to believe this when all the sheep have to do is read the word. Oh, I harp on that. I don't like liars. Yahweh mentions murderers and Satan and liars all in the same breath. He doesn't like liars. Test everything I say, rightfully divide the word, and read the word from beginning to end, and all will be that you need will be revealed to you. Sometimes it's through the help of other saints, and that's okay. If I've helped you at all, OOUBC, not a zero, but OOUBC8, OOUBC8 at gmail.com. Let me know. Good, bad, and the ugly. Let me know. Verse 10, but it has been revealed through the appearing of our Savior, Messiah Yeshua, that who has destroyed death and has brought life and immortality to light through the good news. So he's not going to destroy death at his second coming. He already has at his first coming. Verse 13 is Torah. What you have heard from me, keep as a pattern of sound teaching with faith and love in Messiah Yeshua. Guard the good deposit that is entrusted in you. Guard it with the help of the Ruach HaKodesh who lives in us. He lives in us. So the Ruach is in us. But if you're listening to that tiny small voice that sits on your shoulder there like the ever-ready battery, it's a tiny small voice. It never screams. It's a quiet voice. That's the Ruach. So the Ruach belongs to the Ruach HaKodesh. So just go with it. It's in you. He just said, how do I know? Because Paul just said so, and Jesus told it to Paul, and Yahweh told it to Jesus, Yeshua. There you go. There's the chain of command. Chapter 2, verse 1, Torah. You then, my son, be strong in grace that is in Yeshua Messiah. Verse 3, Torah. Endure hardship with us like a good soldier of Messiah. So Messiah Yeshua, you are to be a good soldier. Verse 15, do your best to present yourself to Elohim as one approved, a workman who does not need to be ashamed, and rightly dividing the word of truth. There's that rightly dividing that we brought up that's right here. There is where I've been saying it for, 217 different broadcasts. It's right there, 2 Timothy verse 15, and that is Torah, which is found on the front of this book. Rightly divide the word. 2 Chronicles 7:14 is hear and obey. Rightly divide the word is 2 Timothy 15. It's so important to us that we put it on the cover. Here's that wicked stuff again. Verse 16, avoid wicked chatter. Chatter has a lot to do with gossiping. Like the news these days. News used to be news. Now it's a gossip channel, propaganda, and evil, all wrapped in one. Verse 19, nevertheless, Elohim's solid foundation stands firm, sealed with his inscription, Yahweh knows those who are his. And everyone who confesses the name of Messiah must turn away from wickedness. There's that wicked word again. Verse 22, 3, and 24. Flee the evil desires of youth, pursue righteousness, faith, love, peace, shalom, along with all those who call on Master out of a pure heart. Don't have anything to do with foolish and stupid arguments, because we know they produce quarrels, and Master's servant must not quarrel. Instead, he must be kind to everyone, able to teach, and not resentful. Chapter 4, verse 2, Torah. Preach the word. Be prepared in season and out of season. Correct, rebuke, encourage with great patience and careful instruction. If you teach the commandments the way I do them in here, every one of them is from the Father, and every one of them is from the Son. And having come from Paul makes no difference whatsoever. To say, well, that's Paul's. That's Paul. No, Paul says in one instance, and we'll get there. He says, and this is how I think. He says that in one of his statements, and it's not Torah. He just kind of puts in and injects his direction and opinion. And he tells you that. So everything else he says is from the Son. And how did he get that on the road to Damascus? He didn't. He got it after he left Damascus, after he got his sight back, and after he was fully healed. He went down. He spent his 2 to 3 years. And now, with Yeshua, that's where all this comes from. He didn't get it from dreams and all this other stuff. He doesn't even say that once. He never says once it came in a dream. And like Ezekiel's stuff, when you read the book of Ezekiel, that's dreams. There's a huge difference between Ezekiel getting dreams for years and years and writing 13 scrolls, long scrolls, making the book of Ezekiel, and Paul, who speaks as a lawyer just like this. I mean, he's just flying through it. Because he's saying all this stuff, he had 3 long years, and if he wrote it down or kept it in his heart or has incredible memory, it doesn't make a difference. There it is in front of you. And when you do this, you're just copying what Yahweh said. So you are speaking prophecy. So if you read this word for word, it's prophecy. You're prophetic. Now, it's not pathetic. You're prophetic. And you don't have to worry about being wrong. Just read the word. That's what I'm doing. I'm reading exactly as it comes out of the Bible. You could do this. You don't need a preacher. You don't need a pastor. You don't need a priest. You don't need somebody sprinkling things on you, blowing smoke in your face, lighting candles a certain way, saying prayers a certain way, doing things a certain way, wearing funny hats. You don't need that. Getting excited here. You can have a direct relationship with your Father so that you can have a direct relationship with everyone that touches you and you touch them. That's how the second Timothy is. And guess what? Guess what? Oh, I touched myself. I got to go wash my hands before COVID. It ends the same way. Verse 21, do your best to get here before winter. Eubulus greets you, and so do Pudens, Linus, Claudia, and the brothers. Now, when you read those names and you read other histories, and the Romans were very good at documenting information, you'll see that Pudens and Claudia had close access to the top leadership of the Roman government. So they were able to give Paul all kinds of freedom to go here and there as he pleased. And only during the last year, as we read in other readings, where he did stay in his, he was getting old. And he'd been a long way if he walked all the way across Europe and so forth. He's a pretty good age. And the last 2 years that we know, waiting before his death, before he was murdered, he was in his apartment or in his unit, wherever he got to stay. Those names will tell you what happened. You just follow what happened to them. It tells you what happened to him. Verse 22, Master Yeshua, Messiah, be with your Ruach. Grace be with you. Okay. Paul wants to go to Thrace. He wants to go back to Greece. He wants to go to Turkey. He didn't get to go. But he had grace. And that's all. You need that and the faith. All right. Shalom.